Okay, welcome back. This time we want to sort of use all this factoring knowledge that we've accumulated to solve quadratic equations. Okay, so solving quadratics by factoring. So first off, we want to identify what these things look like. So there's a standard form. This will be the form. If it's not in this form, you want to get it into this form. Okay, so standard form. What do we have? It looks like this: ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Okay, so what they'll say a lot of times is set it equal to 0, and what they're really saying is you get it into the standard form. Okay. Once you get in the standard form, we could use factoring to solve it, or at least we hope we can factor it and then solve it. Okay. So section 2, solving method. It's what allows us to do this is the zero product principle. Which basically just says if something times something equals 0, then one of those somethings better be 0. Okay? Seems obvious, but sometimes in the world of mathematics, things aren't that obvious. So anyways, if something times something is 0, then either A has to be 0 or B is 0. And it's this fact that will allow us to solve a whole spiel of equations. So let's look at number 2. We have x times x minus 3 is 0. So there's two things here. There's the x, and then the other thing is the x minus 3. So if this times this thing is 0, then either x is 0 or x minus 3 is 0. So one solution is 0. The other solution we have to work a little bit to get. We have to add 3 to both sides. The other solution is 3. Let's keep moving. So here's number 6. We have two binomials multiplied by each other equaling 0. So you just, I mean, it's simple as just taking each part and putting it equal to 0 and solving sort of two mini equations. Okay, so and after a while, you'll be able to just look at it and read off the answers. I never do, but some people do. I like to write it all out. I'm a writer. So anyways, here you subtract 7 on both sides, and you get x is negative 7. Over here, add 2 to both sides. You get 3x is 2, and then divide by 3. Okay, so x is 2/3. And there's our solutions. You circle them or whatever, just there they are. Let's look at number 8. We have 8 times x minus 5 times 3x plus 11 equals 0. Okay, so here we have 3 factors: the 8, the x minus 5, and the 3x plus 11. You can disregard the 8. Okay. So 8 will never be equal to 0. So you can kind of just throw it to the side and only worry about x minus 5 and 3x plus 11. Just solve those two, and that will give you your solutions. So here, add 5. So one of them is 5. Over here, subtract 11. And the other one's negative 11/3. Okay, so long story short, constants, you can kind of forget about them. Okay, so those problems are pretty easy because they were already set up for you, but in general, you're going to have to do the factoring yourself. So these, you know, in the real world, they probably won't be so nice. Let's look at number 10. We have x squared plus 5x plus 6 equals 0. So your first step is to factor it. So the signs say plus plus. I need x, and then it's 6 and 1 or 2 and 3. You have to add the 5, so 2 and 3 is the way to go, or if you'd rather 3 and 2. And then your answers, you set each factor to 0. It's -3 and -2. So the strategy is, first get it into the appropriate form. So if you want to sort of lay out a program, strategy, first make sure it's in the appropriate form. So ax plus by, or sorry, ax squared plus bx plus c is 0. Secondly, then you want to factor completely. Thirdly, set all the parts equal to 0. And fourthly, the book will want you to check your answers on these. I don't do that all that much, but it's not a bad idea if you're looking for that A++ in the class. You want to check your answers. It was a good habit. It's probably bad that I never really checked, but it's not affected my life terribly. So let's look at some of these problems then. Here's number 16. X squared minus 11x equals -10. Okay. So this guy, you need to get it in that form first. It's not in the right form. So you want to add 10 to both sides. Now we'll have x squared minus 11x plus 10 is 0. And then we'll want to factor it. So I got x and x. It has to be minus minus. You're thinking 5, 2, 10, 1. It must be 10 and 1 to get that 11. And then set the parts equal to 0. And that's it. Number 18. You just got to factor this one. So it's not a typical kind of, reverse FOIL or anything. You just factor out the GCF, which in this case is x, and then set each part equal to 0. So either x is 0 or x minus 6 is 0. In other words, x is 6 or x is 0. People always forget that x is 0 part. I mean, that's bad news. If you forget that guy, that's bad news. So make sure you're including them. Let's look at 22. So x squared equals 8x. And this is one people always butcher. I've butchered it in front of classes before and didn't even realize it. What do you need to do? Your first step is to move the 8x over here. So how do they screw it up? They try to divide by x. Okay, as soon as you divide by x, you lose information. So let me show you the right way to do it, and I'll show you the wrong way. Okay, so you move the 8x over, and then it's like the previous problem, right? You factor out the GCF of x. Set each part equal to 0. So x is 0 or x is 8 are your solutions. Okay, so how do they screw it up? Here it is. Don't ever do this, please. They try to divide both sides by x. But the problem is, as soon as you do that, you're supposing x is not 0. So you can never divide by 0. Okay, so you lose that solution. And when you divide by x, you just end up with x equals 8 as your only answer. And that's not true. X is actually also allowed to be 0. It's just you've lost it in this process. So that's wrong. You lose information when you divide by 0. You made an assumption that may not necessarily be true. You've said x is never 0 if you do this. That's not true. X can be 0. In particular, it's one of the solutions. Okay. Let's keep looking at some. Here we got 32. I want to get everything on the left-hand side, so I'm going to subtract the 30x. Get next x squared minus 30x is negative 25. I need to add the 25 both sides. You do it all at once, I don't care. And x squared minus 30x plus 25. Okay, now it's in the standard form. You can factor it. There's no GCF here. I don't know if I made that clear. It has to be minus minus. I'm hoping it's one of those perfect square trinomials. So I'm hoping it's 5 and 5 and then 3x and 3x. Okay. You can FOIL it out to make sure it is. So 9x squared minus 15x minus 15x plus 25. And yeah, so 9x squared minus 30x plus, and it is. We got it. Okay. So now set each part equal to 0, but it's a bit silly to set them both equal to 0 because there's only, you're going to get a repeat. Later on in college algebra, they worry about that. It's called multiplicity 2. If there's 2 of them, like multiple, but they call it multiplicity. There's a movie called Multiplicity back in the day. Anyways, add 5 to both sides. X equals 5/3 is your only solution. What does it mean to have 2 of the same? It affects the graph. Basically, at that point, 5/3, the graph of this thing is going to bounce off the x-axis instead of going through it. Okay, so it'll hit it and like ricochet. Okay, we're not worried about that though. It's just for FYI, sort of thing. Okay, let's move on. So let's look at 41. So it's not in the right form. You have to set it equal to 0, and you're not going to be able to solve it until you kind of distribute. So it seems like you got to go backwards in order to go forwards here. It's like it seems like it's factored already, and oh, I don't want to screw that up, But the truth is, you got to distribute and then move the 18 over, so subtract it from both sides. And then you could factor it and use our zero factor property. So it's plus and minus. And I think it's 6 and 3. Make sure the bigger one's negative. Set each part equal to 0, and you're done. Maybe one more like that. 48. And then we'll look at one application. Again, it seems like your work is done. It's already factored, but that's just wishful thinking. You're going to have to go backwards one step before you can go forward too. Okay, so you got to FOIL it. First, outer, inner, last. Come on, you're like terms, so I'm simplifying. X squared plus 5x minus 24 is negative 30. Then I got to set it equal to 0. So I got x squared plus 5x plus 6, 0. And now it's in the form. Now I can get the work factoring. It's got to be plus and plus. I'm thinking 3 and 2. And then set each part equal to 0 and solve. for your solutions. Oops. Okay, so let's take a look at one application on projectile motion. Section 4, applications. And the deal is you have somebody, this is on page 479 if you want to look at the details. It's number 68. You got somebody, I think it's on top of a building, and they're throwing something off of it into the air, and then it goes down, right? So here's a person, they throw it up in the air, and then it's going to go down. The building's height is 300 feet. Okay. And then they give you an equation that tells you the height given a time. Okay, so the equation is h equals negative 16t squared plus 20t plus 300. They want to know some answers associated with this problem. In particular, when will the ball's height be 304 feet? Okay, so they're asking for when the ball is going to be up here somewhere. And if you look at the sort of the picture, it's going to probably be at 304 feet twice. We want to figure out, I guess, both of those answers. Okay, so when will ball be at height 304 feet? Okay. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, we're going to set this equation equal to 304 and solve for t, the time. Okay, so instead of writing h, I'll write 304. On the other side, negative 16t squared plus 20t plus 300. Okay. I want to set it equal to 0. So you can move this to this side if you wish. That's the quickest way. Okay, so I just subtracted 304 from both sides. Now I'm going to factor out, well, the negative. I don't want that in there. I'm also going to factor out a 4 because each one is divisible by 4. Then I think I'll be able to factor this trinomial. Okay, so it has to be minus, minus. These both have to be 1. And to get the 5 in the middle, it can't be 2 and 2. It has to be 4 and 1. So we'll go 4t and then t. Set these parts equal to 0. Negative 4 will never be 0, so you could kind of throw that out. But these other two parts will give us some information. So solve this equation. We got 4t is 1, so t is 1/4. And that's in seconds. And then over here, t is 1 seconds. So the ball will be at 304 feet at time 1/4 seconds, and then it keeps going up and goes back through that height at time 1 second. Okay? So I generally write up my answers for applications. So the ball will be at 304 feet at times 1/4 seconds and 1 second. Okay. Oops, off the page there. Okay, that's pretty much it. We'll see you next time.